Just before his arrival, the silence in the cramped, yellowing kitchen of their two-bedroom apartment was always a nervous kind of quiet for Anya Vance, a young woman of 29. She was a single mother, her face etched with the exhaustion of juggling night classes and a dead-end administrative job. Her daughter, Ilara, all 7 years of light and relentless energy, was the only thing holding her world together. Anya was just settling into the evening's ritual, rice and beans, when a sound ripped the quiet apart. It was a low, resonant rumble that vibrated through the floorboards, a sound that screamed money in a neighborhood where cars usually coughed and sputtered. Anya went to the window, her heart immediately starting a frantic, high-pitched rhythm against her ribs. Outside, a car that looked like a black mirror, a sleek, custom Rolls-Royce Ghost, was idling right by their cracked curb. It looked utterly ridiculous, an arrogant intruder parked next to a busted recycling bin. Before Anya could fully process the absurdity, the passenger door opened. Out stepped a man. He was tall, impeccably dressed in a suit that looked tailored and black. His presence felt massive, expensive, and profoundly out of place. Anya's breath hitched, not from admiration, but from a sudden, cold wash of suspicion. "Mommy, he's here!" Ilara shrieked, slamming the front door open before Anya could stop her. The man turned, his smile warm and genuine, but Anya felt her stomach drop. Who was he? Why here? She had taught Ilara the strict rule: never talk to strangers, especially those who look like they have something to hide. And a man like this in their complex had to be hiding something. "Hello, Ilara. I hope I'm not too late for dinner," the man said, his voice a deep, cultured baritone. Ilara skipped toward him, holding a drawing of a smiling stick figure. Anya's eyes darted past the man. She saw Marva, the retired neighbor from across the street, peering through her lace curtains. Marva was a woman whose eyes were always brimming with silent, judgmental commentary. And right now, Marva's gaze wasn't just on the expensive car. It was fixed on the color of the man's skin, then back to Anya, a flicker of pure, unadulterated disdain that fueled Anya's own deep-seated, protective fear. "I'm sorry, but who are you?" Anya demanded, her voice tight, the words cutting through the air like thin ice. The man paused, his warm smile faltering for a fraction of a second. "My name is Kellen Thorne," he replied, extending a hand she pointedly did not take. "Ilara invited me." Anya ignored his introduction. "Ilara invites the stray cats, too, Mr. Thorne. It doesn't mean they're welcome for dinner," she snapped, immediately regretting the rudeness, but unable to stop the torrent of fear flooding her judgment. She needed him to leave, right now. A memory flashed behind her eyes, a scene from 5 years ago. It was the moment she discovered her ex-husband, Silas, was not only cheating on her with a younger colleague, but had systematically emptied their savings accounts, leaving her with nothing but a mountain of debt and a 1-year-old baby. Silas was handsome, charming, and seemed trustworthy. Men like that are all liars, a bitter, protective voice screamed in her head. She had built her life back brick by agonizing brick, and she wouldn't let a slick suit and a charming smile, regardless of the man's race, knock it down now. "I think you need to leave," Anya repeated, her voice shaking slightly this time, a mixture of suspicion and a painful, lingering bias she struggled against. Ilara, seeing the tension, looked from her mother to Kellen, her small face crumpling. The beautiful moment of her invitation was shattering before her eyes. Kellen slowly lowered his hand, his eyes filled with a surprising, gentle sadness directed entirely at Anya. "I understand your hesitation, Miss," he prompted gently. "Anya," she supplied reluctantly. "Anya Vance." He nodded. "Ms. Vance, I truly only wanted to thank your daughter for her kindness." But Ilara wasn't listening to the polite exchange. Her lower lip began to tremble, and fat, heartbroken tears rolled down her cheeks. "Why are you mean to the kind man, Mommy?" she whispered, a sound of absolute betrayal. Anya felt a knife twist in her heart. Her daughter, her one unwavering ally, was openly questioning her judgment, siding with a rich stranger. I simply want to know how you know my daughter and why you feel entitled to drive a car that costs more than my entire building and park it outside my door, Anya challenged, the question coming out sharper than intended. Kellen stood his ground, maintaining eye contact and his composure. Of course, a fair question, he said, his voice completely unperturbed. He then explained a simple daily routine. He walked through the local community garden for a moment of peace before heading to his office, and Ilara often played there. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn stone, painted with a bright yellow sun. She gave this to me last week. Said I looked cloudy and needed a sun, he admitted, a small, genuine smile finally reaching his eyes. It was a truth Anya couldn't deny. Ilara was always leaving small, bright gifts for people. As he spoke, Kellen shifted his weight slightly, wincing. He lifted his wrist to adjust his cuff, and Anya saw a dark bruise starting to bloom just beneath his watch. I tripped on a curb earlier today. I'm fine, but I could really use a glass of water. Just water. I'll leave immediately after, Kellen requested, his voice suddenly less confident, more vulnerable. Anya hesitated, her protective walls cracking just a little. A simple glass of water. How much harm could that do? It was basic human decency, and she didn't want Ilara to see her be utterly cold. Fine. 1 minute, and you stay in the living room, Anya conceded, her voice still rough with suspicion. She pushed the door wider, letting him step inside the small, cheaply furnished apartment. As Kellen crossed the threshold, his tailored trousers brushing against the worn carpet, Anya's gaze instinctively dropped to his feet. She saw not just custom-made shoes, but a brand she recognized from a magazine. Italian leather, handcrafted, worth more than her monthly paycheck. The detail, the pristine leather, the perfect shine, screamed an extreme, almost menacing level of wealth. This wasn't just a successful man. This was a billionaire playing a game. Her paranoia, momentarily subdued by Ilara's tears, surged back, hot and terrifying. Stop, Anya commanded, spinning around before she even had the glass of water in her hand. I've changed my mind. I need the truth, Mr. Thorne. Right now. You are too rich, too well-dressed, and frankly, too much for my daughter's little sunstone to be your only motive. What is your game? The accusation hung heavy in the air. Kellen turned slowly, his eyes meeting hers, showing a mixture of respect and a kind of tired resignation. He calmly set his briefcase down, a sleek, leather item Anya didn't even want to guess the price of. Ms. Vance, you are absolutely right to be suspicious. I apologize for the elaborate arrival. My driver insists on the car. My motive is simply that your daughter, unlike almost every adult I interact with, saw me as a person who needed cheering up, not a wallet to be tapped, he explained. He then told a light story about the day he met Ilara. He'd been on his way to a brutal board meeting, stressed and distracted, and had fumbled a bag of apples he'd bought from a street vendor. Ilara, without prompting, had helped him pick them up, refusing the dollar bill he offered. She showed me a simple kindness I hadn't seen in years. That's my motive. I apologize for the intrusion, he finished. The sincerity in his eyes was almost unbearable, making Anya feel small and petty. But just as the knot of suspicion in her stomach began to loosen, her cheap, worn phone buzzed with an urgent notification. Anya glanced down, then her eyes widened in shock. The message was from her boss, the terse HR department email notification glowing on the cracked screen. The subject line, immediate restructuring notice. The body, your position has been eliminated effective close of business today. All access is revoked. Anya swayed slightly, clutching the phone. Laid off, just like that. No severance, no warning. The financial catastrophe she had feared, losing the job, losing the rent, losing the apartment, had just happened, a brutal, extreme event that stole the air from her lungs. Anya didn't even try to hide the breakdown. The email was too much, the timing too cruel. She let out a choked sound, a low, desperate noise that startled Alara. The phone clattered to the cheap linoleum floor. They fired me, she whispered, her voice raw and fragmented. She sank onto a kitchen chair, tears finally flowing, muttering about the looming eviction notice and how she'd failed Alara. Kellen, observing the raw panic, didn't pry or offer platitudes. He simply looked at Alara, whose face was a mask of confusion. "Alara, how about you show me that amazing drawing you made for me one more time?" he suggested softly, distracting the child. While Alara proudly displayed her artwork, Kellen moved closer to Anya. He didn't offer a hand or a hug, maintaining a respectful distance. He simply watched her for a moment, letting her cry. "Ms. Vance," he said, his voice quiet but firm, "you have not failed your daughter. You are a good mother. I know a thing or two about being dismissed unexpectedly. But tonight, you have a 7-year-old who promised someone dinner. I insist. We will go out. My treat. We'll discuss the rest after, but for now we eat." It was a quiet, almost imperceptible offer, but the fact that he was offering to fix the immediate, tiny problem of dinner, when her whole life was collapsing, was a true act of empathy. Anya nodded mutely, too exhausted to fight. But before she could stand up, a sudden, rapid-fire pound, rattled the front door. It was loud and aggressive, the sound of someone demanding entry. Anya froze, looking terrified. Kellen frowned and moved to the door. Through the dusty peephole, Anya could see the distorted, furious face of Marva, the judgmental neighbor from Chapter 1. Marva was peering through the glass, her expression a venomous mix of curiosity and self-righteous disgust, her lips moving, clearly about to unleash a storm of accusations. And, Anya knew, racist insinuation, determined to find a reason to call the police. What would you have done in her shoes? Anya rushed to the door, whispering frantically, "Don't open it. She's looking for a reason. She hates everyone." But Kellen was already pulling the door open. Marva was standing there, arms crossed over her chest, eyes narrowed to critical slits. "I'm calling the landlord, Anya," Marva announced, her voice pitched to Carrie. "We don't allow that kind of traffic in this complex, and certainly not that kind of man in a young mother's home." The emphasis she put on man dripped with thinly veiled prejudice, making the air thick with unspoken, ugly accusations. Kellen took a deliberate step forward, his towering height and expensive suit suddenly shifting from a mark of suspicion to an imposing, protective shield. His entire demeanor changed from gentle benefactor to a sharp, high-powered executive. "Good evening, ma'am," he said, his voice dropping to a low, cold register that commanded attention. "My name is Kellen Thorne. I'm a guest of Ms. Vance and her daughter. Do you have a legitimate, legal concern regarding noise or property damage, or are you simply attempting to harass a tenant?" Marva was momentarily stunned by his immediate, professional counterattack. She stammered, looking suddenly smaller and less certain. Kellen pressed his advantage calmly, mentioning the specific local ordinances regarding neighbor disputes and the serious penalties for making racially motivated false police reports. He didn't raise his voice, but the implied threat of his power was palpable. Marva's face turned crimson. She shot Anya one final, hateful look, muttered something unintelligible, and then retreated, defeated and furious, back into her apartment. Anya let out a shaky breath, leaning against the doorframe. Kellen had not just defused the situation. He had protected her with a level of authority she had never witnessed. Her fear of him was instantly replaced by a deep, overwhelming gratitude. "Thank you," she choked out. Then, with the last shred of her dignity crumbling, she looked at him, the layoff notice burning in her mind. "Mr. Thorne, I'm being serious. I lose the apartment if I don't have a job by the 1st. I'll clean toilets if I have to, but I need to save my daughter." The words tumbled out, raw and desperate. Kellen stood silently for a long moment, processing the confession. "Ms. Vance, I will help you with a job. I promise," he finally said. "But you promised your daughter you'd have dinner with me. That's the priority right now." He maintained the air of normalcy for Alara's sake, which Anya appreciated more than any grand gesture. She quickly pulled together a simple meal, scrambled eggs, toast, and the remaining rice, while Kellen talked gently with Alara about school. Over the humble dinner, Anya felt compelled to ask the question that had been burning in her mind. "A man with your car and your clothes? You're a CEO, right? A business owner?" Kellen nodded, a quiet affirmation. "Yes, I founded a tech company called Equitas. We specialize in creating accessible, low-cost educational software for underserved communities." He then casually added, "It was my first company. It's done well." The understatement was staggering. He then shared a brief, but incredibly moving, piece of his past. "I grew up about 10 blocks from here, actually. Different city, same story," he said, his eyes distant. "My mother was a single parent, working 3 jobs. We didn't have much. When I made my first million, the first thing I did was sell my stock and create a foundation to fund scholarships in neighborhoods like this one." He spoke of poverty and the struggle with a painful intimacy that resonated with Anya's own life. The shared narrative, the understanding of starting from nothing, began to knit a bond of respect between them. The conversation flowed easily, 2 people finally seeing past the surface. Then, Alara, who had been quietly eating, piped up with an innocent, devastating question. "Did you ever have a mom who was sad because she lost her job?" Kellen's fork clattered loudly against the plate. His entire face contorted, a sudden, overwhelming wave of profound grief washing over his features, his strong facade momentarily shattered. The question hung in the air, a bell tolling a forgotten sorrow. Kellen closed his eyes, took a ragged breath, and nodded slowly. "Yes, Alara, I did," he finally admitted, his voice rough. He looked at Anya, his eyes swimming with unshed emotion. "My mother was a single parent, just like yours. She was laid off from her job at a small factory right after she got sick. The stress, the loss of insurance, it was too much." He paused, his jaw tight. "She died shortly after. Stress-related illness. She thought she'd failed me." The pain in his story was raw and authentic. Anya's heart ached, finally understanding the depth of his empathy and the reason he was so determined to help her. His kindness wasn't a patronizing act of charity from a billionaire. It was a deeply personal mission born from his own greatest wound. Her own fear and suspicion dissolved completely, replaced by a fierce sense of solidarity. They were 2 survivors, united by the ghost of a lost parent and the fear of failing their children. "I'm so sorry, Kellen," Anya whispered, using his first name naturally for the first time. The formality between them was officially gone. She realized that the billionaire in her kitchen was more like her than most of the people she knew. She wasn't looking at a threat. She was looking at a mirror reflecting a life she could have had. Kellen gave her a small, grateful smile. He then reached into his suit jacket and pulled out his phone. He didn't ask, he didn't check, he just started typing a rapid-fire email. "Alara, I need a minute with your mom," he said, before looking back at Anya. "Anya, I own a large foundation, and we have administrative openings constantly. I just sent an email to my head of HR, scheduling an interview for you. It's for an executive assistant to the foundation director," he stated. He paused, looking her directly in the eye with an intense focus. "I need you to be at the Equitas Tower at 9 a.m. sharp. You have an interview tomorrow morning at 9. Anya felt a dizzying mix of terror and exhilarating hope. The next morning, she arrived at the address Kellen had given her, the imposing, gleaming Equitas Tower dominating the city skyline. She smoothed down her one good suit, feeling utterly out of place in a lobby of polished marble and cold steel. The interview for an executive assistant position at the Equitas Foundation was intense but fair. The director, a woman named Ms. Chun, seemed genuinely impressed by Anya's resourcefulness and drive. A surge of confidence filled Anya. She had done it. Kellen had opened the door, but she was walking through it on her own merit. This is it. A second chance, she thought, a prayer of gratitude in her heart. She was halfway to the bank of elevators, rehearsing what she would tell Alara when she rounded a corner and slammed straight into a rock-solid chest. Papers scattered to the floor. "Watch where you're going, you clumsy," the man began, before looking up. His voice caught in his throat. Anya's blood ran cold. The man was Silas, her ex-husband, the father of Alara, the handsome liar who had betrayed and abandoned her. He was standing there, in a crisp suit and an air of entitled smugness, wearing a corporate ID badge that identified him as a mid-level operations executive at Equitas. Silas recovered first, his face contorting into a cruel, knowing smirk. "Anya, imagine that," he drawled, his eyes sweeping over her cheap suit with open distaste. He saw the folder in her hand. "The foundation? Really? You're here begging for a job?" He leaned in close, his voice dropping to a vicious whisper that still held the power to terrify her. "Don't worry," he sneered, looking her desperation straight in the eye. "I'll make sure you don't embarrass the company. You're not getting this job." The horrifying realization was that her fresh start was now under the direct, vengeful control of the man who had ruined her once already. The moment he saw her, Silas's mind immediately went into predatory mode. He hated the thought of Anya succeeding, and he definitely hated the idea of her potentially having access to any part of his professional life. He saw his chance for a petty, final revenge. As soon as Anya was out of sight, Silas hurried back to his office, his fingers flying across his keyboard. He called the hiring manager, a woman who already had a low opinion of Anya due to her lower-class background, and invented a series of insidious lies. He claimed Anya had a history of emotional instability following their divorce, that she was prone to unpredictable outbursts, and that she would be a disruptive presence in the Foundation's office, all the while couching his lies in concerned, professional language. It was a cold, calculated act of sabotage, driven by pure, insecure malice. Silas smiled as he hung up, convinced he had torpedoed her career, making sure she remained a desperate single mother relying on him for child support. Anya, arriving home, tried to shake off the encounter. She felt demoralized and sickened by Silas's effortless cruelty, but she forced herself to focus on the one person who mattered. She sat on the floor with Alara, reading a worn, dog-eared book about a brave knight, savoring the simple comfort of her daughter's presence. As she read, a realization dawned on her. Silas only had power because she gave it to him. She was stronger now. She had survived him once, and she would survive his sabotage now. The sense of empowerment was fleeting. The book was barely closed when the phone rang. Anya looked at the caller ID. It was Kellen. She picked up, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm. Kellen's voice, usually calm and measured, sounded grave, almost strained. "Anya, I need to meet you. Now, something has come up regarding the job. Something entirely unexpected." His tone, flat and serious, implied the news was bad, suggesting a catastrophe far beyond the usual hiring process, an extreme event that felt like the bottom was dropping out of her world yet again. You never see the danger coming. Anya met Kellen not at his mansion, but at a quiet corner table in a nondescript downtown cafe, a sign the conversation was serious and sensitive. Kellen didn't waste time. He slid a folder across the table. "Silas is a problem," he stated simply. Anya nodded, her face grim. "He tried to sabotage me, didn't he? Told him I was crazy." Kellen smiled, but without humor. "He did. He called Ms. Chun and fed her a line of absolute garbage about your instability. But you need to understand something, Anya. Equitas is my company. I knew you were meeting him today, as I had him flagged for an unrelated reason. He paused to let the next bomb drop. Silas has been involved in skimming profits from a nonprofit sector we manage. He's been stealing. I was already looking for a reason to fire him, and his malicious phone call to sabotage an applicant I personally endorsed gave me all the reason I needed. Anya stared at him, the weight of the revelation almost crushing. She had walked into a job interview and unwittingly into a trap set by her ex-husband, which Kellen, the CEO, had been observing the entire time. "So, the job?" she managed to ask. Kellen gave her a reassuring, firm nod. "The job is yours, Anya. I needed a final confirmation of your character, and the fact that you haven't lashed out or quit proves you're a fighter. Welcome to Equitas." The immediate relief was immense, but then Kellen slid a screen across the table. It was a printout of an internal email dated 3 weeks prior. The sender was Silas, and the recipient was a colleague. The subject line was simply the CEO's latest blunder. The email body was a torrent of vile, condescending commentary, mocking Kellen and questioning his intelligence, his leadership, and his very right to be in power, all based on overtly racist tropes and slurs. It was not just betrayal. It was a deeply ugly, targeted racist attack against the man who had just saved her. Anya's eyes scanned the email, and the rush of elation from getting the job instantly curdled into a cold, protective fury. The words were a stark, painful reminder of the quiet, insidious racism that thrived even in the highest echelons of power. Her rage wasn't just for Kellen. It was a visceral reaction on behalf of every person who had ever been judged and attacked based on the color of their skin. "How dare he?" she whispered, her hands trembling as she pushed the screen away. "After everything you've done for people like me, like us." She saw a reflection of her own struggles in that email. The constant need to prove herself, to work twice as hard just to be taken seriously. She realized this wasn't just Silas being a jerk. This was systemic bias rearing its ugly head, a fight Kellen had to wage daily, even as a billionaire. We've all seen cases like this, but this one is different. Kellen sighed, the weariness returning to his face. "This is my life, Anya. I'm either a token, a cautionary tale, or a target. People assume my success is luck or a diversity quota," he said quietly. Silas's email is typical. It's why I don't trust easily. He looked at her, his expression a plea for understanding. As they sat in silence, the quiet moment of shared understanding was shattered by an extreme event. Anya's phone rang, displaying Silas's name. She declined a first call, but he immediately called back. She answered this time, putting it on speaker. Silas's voice, usually slick and controlled, was now a high-pitched snarl, fueled by desperation and panic. "Anya, you tell Kellen Thorne I did not steal anything, and you tell him to hire you, or I'm coming to get Alara. Retract your lies." The threat, aimed at her daughter, was an appalling escalation, forcing Anya into a role of fierce protector. Anya did not hesitate. The threat against Alara solidified her resolve. She met Silas the next day in the company parking garage, a cold, neutral ground. Silas was clearly reeling, his expensive suit looking suddenly cheap on his panicked frame. He tried to start with bluster, but Anya cut him off, her voice calm and lethal. "Shut up, Silas," she ordered, and for the first time in their relationship, he obeyed. "I know about the skimming. Kellen has the proof. More importantly, I know about the email. The racist one. The one where you mocked the CEO of the company you work for." She pulled up a copy on her phone, and the sight of his own words made Silas's face drain of color. "I can have you arrested for theft and harassment, but Kellen and I have agreed on an alternative," Anya stated, her control absolute. "You will resign quietly today. No severance, no unemployment, but also no police report. You walk away with your dignity, a grace you never gave me." It wasn't revenge. It was the quiet justice of a woman who chose empathy over destruction. Silas, broken and utterly defeated, could only nod, his life of entitlement finally crashing down. That evening, Anya and Alara were picked up by Kellen's driver. The destination was not a simple dinner, but Kellen's stunning hilltop mansion, a fortress of modern architecture and glass overlooking the entire city. The house was not ostentatious, but it was massive, elegant, and quiet, a sanctuary. The sight of it was an extreme event in itself, a physical representation of the world Alara's innocent invitation had unlocked. He opened the door, and what he found inside, we'll get to that in a moment. Anya stepped out of the Rolls-Royce onto a sprawling terrace, the city lights twinkling below like scattered jewels. She felt a profound sense of awe. The sheer opulence of Kellen's life, the panoramic view, the staff moving silently in the background, the original artwork, made her feel momentarily dizzy and overwhelmed. She was overcome by the realization of the debt of gratitude she owed him and the true extent of his power. "It's quiet," she finally said simply. Kellen smiled, leading them into a vast, yet welcoming, living room. "It's the only place I can truly think. And truly be Kellen, not Mr. Thorne, CO," he confessed. They talked for hours that evening, not about work or money, but about their core values. They discussed the struggles of single parents, the lack of quality childcare, and the need for more mentorship in their old neighborhoods. They slowly developed a bond that transcended a job offer, a partnership built on mutual respect and shared experience. They spoke of the future, imagining programs that could truly help others. Alara, oblivious to the high-stakes conversation, was busy playing a board game with Kellen's head of household, happily coloring. The evening ended as Anya and Alara stood on the balcony, Kellen beside them. Alara pointed up at the massive, glowing orb hanging in the black sky. "Look, Mommy," she said, her voice small and sweet. "The moon is saying thank you." Anya followed her gaze, and a wave of pure, absolute relief washed over her. This second chance wasn't just a job or a financial rescue. It was a profound opportunity to heal the deep wound of betrayal and the quiet corrosion of fear that had defined her life for 5 years. A year later, Anya Vance stood confidently at a podium in a beautifully restored community center downtown. She was no longer just an executive assistant. She was the director of outreach for the Equitas Foundation's new initiative. She was thriving. Her life and Alara's transformed. She had even developed a comprehensive business plan focused on providing stable housing and educational resources for single mothers like herself. Imagine losing everything you worked for and then building it all back stronger. As she stepped away from the podium, Kellen met her eyes and nodded, a look of profound pride on his face. This was their shared victory. The less extreme event of the evening was a celebratory dinner with the foundation staff, marking the launch of the initiative, a comfortable scene of professional success. Then, Kellen led Anya to a quiet side room, his face serious. "I have one last thing to share," he said. He pulled out a brochure for the Equitas Foundation. He showed her the name of their flagship scholarship fund for disadvantaged youth, the Eleanor Thorne Memorial Fund, named after his mother. He then revealed the final twist, the true measure of his character and the strength of their partnership. "Your initiative, the one focused on housing stability for mothers?" he asked. "I've decided to fully fund it with a $10 million endowment." He then looked directly into her eyes. "And it will be called the Genevieve Vance Initiative, named after your mother. Because your fight, Anya, is just as important as my mother's memory." Anya gasped, tears welling up as she realized the depth of the respect and equality he was showing her. The Billionaire Act wasn't the car, the mansion, or the job. It was the profound empathy and the refusal to let fear or bias define their story. Kellen's action meant that her struggle and her mother's memory were now enshrined as a symbol of hope and kindness for countless others. As Anya and Kellen shook hands, not as a boss and an employee, but as equals in a powerful partnership forged from kindness and shared pain, The camera lingered on Alara, who was laughing, her small face radiating pure joy, her mother's future secured by a man who valued character over class. But what happened next shocked everyone. The greatest wealth is not money. It is empathy. Alara's tiny act of kindness didn't just invite a man to dinner. It set in motion a chain of events that proved that trust, once earned, can rewrite a destiny. She never saw the danger coming, and most people don't. Subscribe now, so you're not caught off guard by the next incredible story. Only subscribers get the full story. Don't be left behind.